So, scaling an e-commerce environment beyond Magento. Disclaimer, this is an idea of mine I had back September. It's a prototype and you're kind of my guinea pig, so just give me any feedback on this. It's a thought idea and I would love to hear more about it from you guys also after my talk. I'm Sander. I've worked at several web agencies for the last, I think, 7 years or so. Switched to merchant actually last August. Worked with PHP for 10 plus years, 5 years with Magento. I participated in a couple of events and you can find me on Twitter. Fit for me. I'm going to go through this very fast, but it might give some context. We're a food supplement for bariatric patients. So if you have a stomach reduction, you need our vitamins. We're actually also in Italy. We're running on Magento 1, unfortunately, 1.14. We're in 13 different countries and still growing, but it's all in one installation. We do about 1,000 plus orders per week through the web shop. And surprisingly, we do a lot via telephone, agents, resellers, and other kinds of selling points. But still, we're mostly an online web shop. So, fulfillment, that's one of the most important things for us. All the orders we do are subscription-based, I think 95% or so. So we might sell once, but then after that, you'll get your order via, or from the Netherlands actually, also here in Italy. We're also starting up a warehouse in the UK soon, and we're working with resellers on other continents like Southern America, Middle East, stuff like that. Also, we're doing a lot of B2B orders, which are booked directly through an ERP system, and the B2C orders we do are in Magento. This is basically what our fulfillment looks like. So we have Magento to a warehouse. We're using a service called Puzzle. It's not really important, but they actually print our labels and manage our contracts with DHL. And then the parcel gets shipped to DHL and they make sure it gets here in Italy. And then my boss said, well, actually we're going to have multiple warehouses and we're going to ship with not only DHL, but also FedEx and UPS. So we were expanding the way we are shipping. This is how we integrated Magento, the fulfillment in Magento. We have a simple module that works with an observer whenever an order is invoiced. We have an event. We get some data from the order and customer object. We do some address checks, mostly because of the warehouse we're using. They want a certain formatting and validation on that. We will create an XML file and we'll have to FTP it to the warehouse system where they'll use it in their internal system. And we are determining the types of shipment box we're using, so it either can go through the mail slot or we have to use a parcel service. For example, everywhere in Europe we're using the same mailbox, except in Berlin, I think, there it's smaller. It's really annoying. And there is some other quirky stuff we have to do to actually get the order to be accepted by our fulfillment company. And then we had another meeting back in September about how we wanted to use a point-of-sale system in several pharmacies, on events, at hospitals. So basically an offline checkout. Our ERP system for B2B will also handle some exotic countries we're shipping to, and we'll also handle bulk orders. And then we're using .mailer. It's like a triggered email application, but we'll also use that to send stuff like an umbrella to a loyal customer. And what it came down to is it's going to look something like this. where you have on one side all the systems that are generating shipments, going through Magento, ending up at the warehouse and at the shipping company. Which meant that Magento is going to be our main shipping platform, which is a ton of connections we have to make. Magento to the warehouses, Magento to the shipping contract manager, Basel, Magento and the ERP system, Magento and the POS system, and .mailer and Magento. So Magento as a shipping API requires you to make a full order, invoice, and shipment to actually come to the XML we need to send to the warehouse. And Magento isn't the most stable API platform simply because stuff changes. We have updates from Magento itself. We might install a module that can break Magento. And if we're going to move to Magento 2, hopefully in 2017, probably our module won't work and all our other connections won't work either. Magento basically sucks at doing everything. I've learned after 5 years. But it's really good as an online catalog and checkout. Use Magento for its purpose. I've seen a ton of web shops that have all kinds of stuff built in because at one point the merchant thought I wanted a web shop and then thought, yeah, a blog would be really nice and I also want to do this and I also want to do that and we'll just build Magento modules for that for some reason and it gets bloated, stuff breaks and basically Magento works really well, cached and optimized. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort to make a shop go pretty fast actually if you just use the catalog and the checkout. Using Magento for the rest, it's highly restricted by Magento. Magento has its own funny, quirky ways of working, and if you want to do non-e-commerce stuff in it, it generally works in a weird way. It creates overhead, so basically you're making a new module and still the code for tags is implemented on a blog page. And it's tightly coupled, at least Magento 1. So generally it takes more effort to actually make all your methods work with Magento than just quickly building a feature if you already know how you're going to build it. So why do we do this? Actually, I've learned this from 7 years with a web agency. You do stuff from one framework. Maybe 2 frameworks. I've worked for a company that did Magento and Typo 3, but normally we just use Magento as a solution. And features are made to fit the technical solution. This is what Magento can do, so we'll more or less build it into Magento, and anything that doesn't work in Magento we'll tell the customer they don't want it anyway. Scalability in a project is relative. Of course, you're going to promise your customer that they can handle twice the amount of customers, but that's about it. And you're keeping in mind mostly the project scope, so the thing you agreed on with the customer. This is what we're going to build for you, and this is what we're going to deliver. And to be honest, with a couple of customers where the budget is tight, you're just going to make it work for now. You're nearing the deadline, there's no money anymore, just make it work and make everything billable. And then I switched to merchant, whole new world. The scope changes almost weekly. We use 2-week sprints. Within that time they can change their mind, but outside of the 2 weeks they can just do whatever they want, I guess. We're building features to be replaced, to be honest. So one day they want to go to Southern America, next day they want to go to the Middle East. Means code has to change to scale for that. Stuff can be thrown out within a couple of months. And when you're working for a merchant, they don't really care about the framework, the budget, or the scope. They just want a solution that fits for their project. And you're an in-house developer. You're already there. You're already paid for, so yeah, they don't really care. It takes 10 hours or more. And an application should be built modular and movable. And with that I mean we've expanded our business at Fit4Me, moving into different markets, and all of a sudden one of those markets we're going to sell them. So we actually have to extract a lot of code from our framework to hand over to another company. So how do we manage that, especially for fulfillment? How do we make a solution that will fit that? Make it a microservice. Well, microservice-ish. In computing, a microservice is software architecture style in which complex applications are composed of small independent processes communicating with each other using language-agnostic APIs, according to Wikipedia. So, translating that, I guess it's an application and underlying infrastructure specifically designed and optimized for one task with an API interface to communicate with. Or in the case of Fit4Me, an application that creates formatted shipments orders really well. So just an application that takes a certain kind of product or products, takes an address, creates an XML out of that, and makes sure it gets to the right warehouse to be shipped. So this is what it's going to look like, theoretically. We have all our different sources on the left. We have a microservice in the middle, and that gets pushed through to the warehouses, the label service, etc. Where to start? I never built a microservice actually. When I started to think about it, I didn't even know I was thinking about a microservice. I started to read a couple of blog posts, and apparently it's called that way. I think it starts with writing down what business logic you really want to move. A microservice works really well if you define exactly what task it should do and what code you need to do that. Document the API interface, what data will be sent. Think ahead of what you actually want to send through to the other side. Don't just send all the data contained in an order in Magento, because you don't really need that. You don't need a coupon code or whatever. Pick a framework to build with. I wouldn't use Magento for this, to build a microservice. Sorry. Talk to Fabian, he has a solution for that. So pick another framework and set up an environment to run the microservice. I use DigitalOcean, they're cheap, they're easy, but think of what kind of infrastructure you want to run it on, at least for testing. Some bonus tips, stuff I kind of didn't know beforehand, and I wish I knew. Keep it simple. It's fun to go all out, but just make sure it works first and then build out. Stick with what you know. I started out with the idea that I would use like Node.js or Python to build this, but I didn't really know those languages, and it added a lot of complexity to the issue. Read up on microservices, because it's not just an application you're building, but it's a way of working and thinking, which is actually really interesting. And to start out, pick a simple module in Magento that is easy to port to a microservice. You could start out with the checkout or the catalog, but that's going to be a lot of work. And lastly, document a lot. Write stuff out. You're creating a whole new platform, actually. If you're using, or if you're working with other developers, they kind of want to know what you're doing. So start documenting from the start. So we had to pick a framework. Some of the requirements were for us a low learning curve. We didn't want to invest 2 or 3 months in learning an actual framework. It had to be compatible with PHP and Nginx, so PHP 5.6. PHP is simply what we know, so it's easy. It had to be fast and lightweight, has an API layer built in, and has a testing framework built in, because Vinay says you need to test. So we decided on Lumen. It's a branch off of Laravel, but then stripped down. It's pretty lightweight, already has a nice API layer built in. It's perfect, at least for what we're doing. So, basic Magento module. This is actual code, but I kind of cleaned it up a little bit. But we probably all built something like that. So here we're creating an XML. We're actually extracting the data from the order. And here we're actually sending it via FTP. It works. It's pretty okay. Now we're going to rewrite it into extracting first the Magento data in models. So what we're doing here is actually getting the order, getting all the data from it. The classes you see don't do much else than just contain the data. But to keep it nice and orderly, I created different objects for those. And then we're going to put the logic in loosely coupled classes. So one of the things you need to do is actually get the business logic from Magento into your microservice. For that, you need to move all the business logic you wrote to a generic class that you can implement just about anywhere. So what we're doing is we're having a cursor with the data. We're doing some magic here, I guess. And there we're sending it to the warehouse. The code isn't really important, it's more the steps you're taking. Actually, this is a part Lumen. It's really nice. Lumen is nice. It's clean, it's fast. You're setting up a database table. You're defining an API. So here you just make a couple of methods which inserts the data into a database table, really easy. And you set up a cron job. So what we're doing is we have an API on an event, data gets in, we store it, and we run a cron job every 5 minutes. It actually does all the data sending to the warehouse because you don't want to do that in one call. If the warehouse doesn't respond, you'll have an issue. That's basically this. So, that's it. There you have your microservice. But this is a prototype. We're actually working on a lot more. So what's next? Better infrastructure. We want a management layer. I didn't know I wanted that, but apparently it's a thing and you want that. For example, Kong. They're a service and they provide stuff like rate limit, logging, plugins, and they all do it in a nice layer. Also API exploration, so if you have more APIs, they kind of expose those. Check it out, it's really nice. Using event-driven hosting, you can do that with AWS. They have Lambda. I didn't really go into that, but apparently it's really nice where you have an API because you don't have a defined server, you just use what you need at that moment. Build more services. Our marketing department wanted a URL shortener, so that will be a really nice feature to build as a microservice, where all the logic is contained in an API, you send in a long URL and it gives back a short URL. And actually doing all the subscription logic outside of Magento. We now do it in Magento, it's a lot of hassle. Would be nice to do that in a separate microservice. And other stuff, I guess, in the future. And that's it. Thank you.